In Chicago, two comedian skeptics named Andy and Art were mysteriously abducted by the illusionary mastermind and conspiracy theorist known only as Mr. Bunker. The following serves as a record of Bunker's attempt to convince non-believers of the truth about conspiracies and paranormal activity. Andy and Art give an uninterrupted presentation and verdict on the plausibility of these offbeat topics, delivering what they call the whole enchilada. Will Mr. Bunker convince these two skeptics any of this is real? Will it convince you?
Listeners, welcome back to Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time podcast, the only podcast, not really, about two skeptics.
The only podcast about conspiracies, paranormal, and all things bizarre. Don't bother listening to any of the other ones, because we're the only game in town, baby.
That's it. That's us. Listeners, I am your co-host, Arthur Stone, and with me, as always, is your co-host, Andy Hart.
Hey, everybody. Glad to see you again. Thanks for being here. Want to talk to you a bit about some things that I've been thinking. Wow. So, how y'all doing? You having a good day?
Oh.
Cool. Glad you're here.
Wow. Andy's charged up. He's fired up. He's ready to go. He's ready to rock and roll. As always, listeners, we're here on Mr. Bunker. We're trapped once again in the bunker of...
Here we are.
...of the titular Mr. Bunker's... Bunker?
Titular Bunker's bunker.
Every week, he finds a way to frickin' dupe us and bring us down
We're
here.
A bunch of nincompoops.
We're dumb. We're dumb
skulls.
Listeners, this week is no different. We are two skeptics. We're down here in the bunker, and we're forced to review some stuff. And here we are, another week, another bunker trip.
You know, we're back here in the bunker again, listeners, but... we've been abducted. Sure, we're forced to podcast, but we take this very seriously.
Very serious.
And, every single week when we get abducted, our goal is to give you, the listener, the entire enchilada.
The whole enchilada.
And in that spirit, we also like to share with you, an important ingredient is how did we get here this week.
Before we jump into our research, before we jump into our topic, before we jump into our discussion, we share with you how Mr. Bunker captured us and got us, forced us to be down here. And Andy, would you like to go first, or you want to throw it to me?
Oh, I would love to go first. I'm happy to go first.
Andy, go right ahead.
Folks, we are here.
Beautiful, beautiful boy.
We are here in Chicago. Thank you, Art. We are here in Chicago.
We're from Chicago.
Chicago. This toddling town. Chicago. I'll show you around. Art, the weather's finally starting to turn here in Chicago. It's starting to...
when the weather is nice and the water is warm. Come on down.
Got the mind.
No.
When
the weather is nice and the you can get on. You can get it. You can get it. You can get it. You know.
Is that 11 Spoonful song? John Sebastian? Am I wrong?
When the weather's warm and the moon.
I get it.
You got it. Anyway, sorry.
So we're looking for some hot fun in the summertime here in Chicago.
Oh,
and
love hot fun.
You know, what's great about Chicago, one thing that's great about Chicago is our extensive network of city parks. Chicago... Why, Art, why are you laughing? You don't agree?
You just, no, I do agree. Chicago parks are some of the greatest in the entire country.
Yeah, Chicago's
known for its public parks.
Chicago made a real commitment to the city early in its history that about green spaces and preservation, especially of the lakeshore. And so Chicago has one of the most beautiful lakefronts in probably all of the United States for a metropolitan area.
It's one of the few things in my life that keeps me from diving just deeper into the existential dread that is existence is when I'm on the bus I'm looking out at that beautiful lakeshore.
Beautiful.
God, it's
Absolutely
nice.
beautiful.
It almost makes me forget that I'm sandwiched in between two sweaty, disgusting people who won't move out of my way, even though there's ample space to go sit down on the bus. You know what I'm saying?
They just love rubbing up against you.
Anyway.
But Chicago's extensive network of public parks is quite an asset to the city, and a great way to spend your time while in the city. And at some city parks, they have what are known as splash pads, and these are water features that are built into the park where you can come by the park and run through the water or something to cool off.
Oh yeah, I have good memories of those as a child.
Yeah, you're familiar. So
I feel like it never worked. Never mind.
Well, they're off for a lot of the year because obviously it gets pretty cold, so you have to turn it off. But and sometimes they turn them on really late. But that's a whole other thing. I mean, but today it was a pretty nice day. The sun was shining, and you know what I thought? I thought, hey, I'm gonna head over to the park. I'm gonna get in that splash pad.
You and all the children.
Me and all of my friends. And I am a father. It's okay. I know these children. So I go over to the splash pad, and you got a little like button you hit to make the water come out, and I push that button. Water springs forth, cool, refreshing water, feels great. And then I notice that the pipe, it's like it's got this thing where there's like a big tube, and then there's a lot of little tubes that spray the water out in different like ways.
Yeah.
I noticed that there's like this bulge in the tube, and it's sliding up.
Okay.
And then the bulge goes into one of the smaller pipes, and that pipe is like really, it's a smaller.
It's about to burst.
It looks like it's at capacity, and then the bulge just goes right to the edge, and then, boop, like a party popper, Mr. Bunker shoots out of the little tube.
God.
He's got a net with weights, and he just sinks down right on top of me. His whole weight hits me on the dome of the skull, and I just go immediately unconscious.
Jeez.
And I wake up soaking wet in the back of his windowless van.
Oh my God. I thought that was sweat.
No. Well,
That's why you're all wet.
okay, partly. Some of it's from the splash pad, though.
Now the bulge, Andy, that was your nickname.
Wait, what are you going to say?
Say the bulge. Was that ever a nickname that you had?
Yeah, that was during my Spider-Man villain phase in high school. I was the bulge.
Andy, I don't mean to make fun of you, but like,
I kind of feel like you do.
what am I going to do? I feel like you brought this on yourself because you've been talking so much shit to him.
Yeah.
Of course, don't talk shit to him. You won't get slammed on the head by the bulge and trapped in a giant weighted net.
I deserved all the head trauma I suffered today.
What's it doing,
You don't.
What's
you
a little
don't-
head trauma?
Art, there's a few rules in life. You don't spit in the wind. You don't tug on Superman's cape. You don't mess with the Lone Ranger or whatever. That song.
I didn't know any of those. I mean, I guess I understand that spitting at the wind, but
You know that song.
rawhide. That one?
No.
Rawhide. Rawhide. Woo, wee, rawhide.
Head him up, move him out. Head him up, move
There
him
it
out.
is.
Rawhide, rawhide. Head him up, move him out. Head him up, move him out. Head him up. Head him out.
Head 'em up.
Rawhide.
Head him up. Come on now. Head him up. Rawhide. I don't know. I mean, Andy, I'm sorry that happened to you. I'm sorry that
rain and wind and weather, hell-bent forever, wishing my gal was by my side. That's
I bet
Rawhide.
you were wishing your gal was by your side when you got captured.
Yeah, I wish. I wish I hadn't been alone in that splash pad. There might have been some protection.
Yeah.
So
I'm
that's how I'm
sorry,
here.
Andy. I'm sorry. Maybe I think you and Bunker need to work something out.
Maybe we'll have a chat.
He doesn't usually like to talk to us very much. Occasionally, though, he will.
Me especially.
Well,
But
I challenge him a lot.
I have a grating personality.
You challenge him. Yeah, you're like a giant cheese grater.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of cheese graters, Andy.
Oh, is this going to be how you got here?
Yeah. I decided to get a tasty little morsel, tasty little bite to eat, and I thought, what better than some king crab legs?
Oh, king crab!
Who doesn't love a good king crab dipped in butter sauce?
Chicago's native king crabs.
Chicago, known for its king crabs,
Buy local
and nothing else.
Yeah.
So I went on down to a little place, you might have heard of it, called Joe's Crab Shack. It's a great Chicago chain.
Yeah, an institution in this city.
I noticed the sign was a little muffled. It said Moe's Blab Flack, which I thought that was weird.
That's not Joe's Crab Shack then.
Well, I thought maybe they were doing some renovation. Something happened to the
Moe's
sign.
Blab Flack? Blab Flack?
Yeah.
It's not even not even very close to Crab Shack.
In retrospect, you'll see.
Yeah.
You
I have
know,
a feeling I know where this is
maybe
going.
I should have learned my lesson. And so I was there, and there wasn't anyone else in the restaurant, which was probably another red flag. But I was just thought to myself, I gotta have some crab legs and some butter sauce. Gotta have some butter sauce.
Folks, you don't know this, but I know this because I know Art. Art says that at least once every couple of days.
Yeah, I say that. Anytime. I say that a lot. I'll be paying for something, and they'll be like, "Would you want a receipt?" And I'll be like, "No, but I want some of that butter sauce." And then they'll be like, "What?" And I'll be like, "Butter sauce." And eventually, I'll get kicked out.
Yeah, as it should be.
So I go in and I sit down and I don't, I order. And it wasn't a waiter. It was like one of those Chili's type thing where you just kind of put your order into a little kiosk.
Mm-hmm.
I ordered some king crab legs with the butter sauce.
Mm-hmm.
And so the crab legs appear on a conveyor belt type thing.
Oh.
Which was very strange, but I just was so focused on the crab legs, and I thought, Andy, I got to tell you, these king crab legs, more like Leviathan legs.
They were enormous?
Enormous. An enormous king crab comes out on a plate.
The whole crab?
The whole crab!
Oh.
And I'm like, whoa, I'm going to need a bigger pair of crab pliers.
Yeah.
And I'm going to need more butter sauce.
Crab crackers.
Crab crackers.
Crab crusher.
Yeah, I've been called that a time in my life.
Mm-hmm.
There goes that crab cracker.
There's Crab Cracker.
Uncle Crab Cracker.
Oh, Uncle Crab Cracker.
My favorite band. And yeah, so all of a sudden the crab starts twitching, and wouldn't you know it?
Oh no.
It's fucking Bunker.
Wow.
And he wrestles me to the ground in his giant crab suit.
Did he pinch you?
Yeah, he pinched me on my butt.
Oh God.
Like some kind of Godzilla monster.
Oh no.
B-movie horror monster. He
no.
wrestles me to the ground and covers me in butter sauce.
Oh no.
And so there must have been something in the butter sauce, because it made me very sleepy.
Chloroform?
Probably.
Wait, was it chamomile? Did he chamomile you 2 weeks in a row?
Could have been that damn chamomile. I mean, maybe he ordered a big stockpile
You're
of chamomile
too
tea.
susceptible to chamomile.
I don't know what to tell you. I get real sleepy. That's why I'm here, and that's why I smell like butter.
Well, being an enormous pig, I personally like the fact that you smell like butter.
So it works out.
Yeah.
Everything works out, Andy.
I'm wet and you smell like butter. We're both happy.
Isn't it fitting, Andy, that you're all wet and I went to go get some crab legs, and both of those have to do with what? The sea, Andy.
Oh.
That's right, the ocean.
Yeah, it does, now that you mention it.
And that relates to our topic today, doesn't it?
Sure does.
Andy, today we're discussing the legend of Atlantis.
Atlantis, and not just the resort in the Bahamas.
Which I've been to. I thought it was fun. A little overpriced, but fun.
Oh, wow. There's the real conspiracy. Why does it cost so dang much? Folks, today we're discussing the lost civilization
That's right.
of Atlantis.
That's right. We're going to uncover the Greek legend that spawned this idea that there is a lost city under the sea. And we're going to uncover what happened to it.
We're going to talk about it. We're gonna give you the facts. We're gonna wrap it up in discussion tortilla and smother it in verdict sauce.
So, listeners, this is your submarine co-captains, first mate.
Prepare to die! Prepare to die!
Dive, Andy.
Diver down!
Diver down. We're going deep under the water to uncover all the secrets and prepare you a nice shore lunch snack of enchiladas on this episode of Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time Podcast. Right now, the lost city of Atlantis. There's whales.
Under the sea. Under the sea. Darling, it's better down where it's wetter. Take it from me. Those are, of course, the iconic words sung by Sebastian the Crab in the hit Disney animated film The Little Mermaid. But dear, sweet, gentle listeners, don't be fooled by Sebastian's confident delivery and engaging calypso beat. It's not all wet fun under the sea. In fact, for some, under the sea means certain death. This was certainly the case for the inhabitants of Atlantis, an island nation referred to by Plato in his Socratic dialogues, Timaeus and Critias.
Beautiful, Andy. That's right. And Andy, if there's one thing I love, it's being shirtless inside a highway restroom area, bathroom.
Yep.
But if there's two things I love, the second thing is definitely the writings of Plato. You know this
For sure.
So it should come as no surprise to you, listeners, that I shall now relate in brief Plato's Atlantis. When the world was formed, the gods divided it amongst themselves. Poseidon, the Greek god of the sea, was given the area containing Atlantis, a series of concentric islands filled with riches, resources, and exotic, rare wildlife. Poseidon fell in love with a human woman from Atlantis, Plato. And they did it. Sexually hardcore. In as many positions as you can imagine. Cowgirl, reverse cowgirl, the perfumed garden. You name it, they did it. And they did it about as many times as they could before Plato had to go to nursing school.
Wait.
Is there a problem, Andy?
Plato wrote this?
It's mostly Plato's writing. Although some of the story was adapted from my Plato erotic fan fiction called Plato's Repubed Dick.
What?
You don't read my
Plato's
Angel Fire?
repubed dick?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Available anywhere fine books are sold. And by that, I mean my basement. On the hard drive of my computer.
Oh, boy.
Anyway, okay. Poseidon and Plato had 10 children together. 5 sets of twins, all boys.
Whew, what a batting average.
That's, he's a god. The oldest son, Atlas, was given control of the islands, hence the name Atlantis.
Oh.
Atlantis was a luscious, voluptuous place, brimming with resources and wealth. The Atlanteans had it great, but eventually, they wanted more. They decided to set their navy to sail to conquer the Mediterranean. Battle hard.
Okay.
Atlantean ships blasted loads of seamen on the shores of many a nation.
All right.
But one nation blocked the Atlantean penetration.
Okay.
Those plucky little Athens. That's right, listeners. The little nation that could send the Atlanteans back on sails of shame. When the Atlanteans return to their island paradise, they find out that the gods had a meeting and were quite effing pissed that the Atlanteans had turned so sinful. Mighty king of gods and famously buff, glistening, hogged-out deity Zeus.
Okay.
I'm adapting some from my writings, Andy. Okay. He sent earthquakes over the course of one day and one night, which sank Atlantis under the sea. Better down where it's wetter? Not for the Atlanteans, Andy.
Now, Art, you love the writings of Plato.
I do.
Almost as much as you love being shirtless in artisan bakeries.
Guilty as charged.
So I know you'll know this. In case any of our listeners don't, though, allow me to share this tidbit. In Timaeus, the story of Atlantis is shared by Critias, not the titular Timaeus. Critias says he heard the story from his grandfather, who heard it from Critias' great-grandfather, who heard it from Solon, the Athenian statesman and reformer. After enacting his famous reforms in Athens, Solon gave up his power and left Athens for a while so he wouldn't be pressured to repeal any of his laws. Now, while away from Athens, Solon traveled to Egypt, and according to Critias, via the writings of Plato, of course, Solon visited the temple of Neith, an Egyptian goddess of creation, war, and hunting, where the priests related to him the story of Atlantis. So we now know the tale of Atlantis and the origin story of the origin story. So why are we talking about any of this, though?
Well, Andy, and I'm going to need your help with some of these names coming up, but since appearing in Plato's writing, Atlantis is a story that just doesn't seem to want to go away. Even though it sank, it just keeps bubbling back up.
That's a thing that can happen.
The Neoplatonic philosopher Zodicus wrote an epic poem based on Atlantis in the 3rd century CE. Atlantis experienced a bit of a revival, during the European Renaissance as Western civilization began rediscovering the works of Greek philosophers. Renaissance writers really began to imagine Atlantis as a utopian, even a fruitopian society. Then in 1882, Ignatius Loyola Donnelly, the former Minnesota congressman, published Atlantis, the Antediluvian World. I got it?
That was really good.
Look at me. Donnelly's book sought to prove that Atlantis was once a full-on continent in the Atlantic Ocean, opposite of the Mediterranean Sea. By the time the ancient peoples were writing about Atlantis, the only remaining part of the continent was an island. Donnelly further hypothesized that the inhabitants of Atlantis were the first people on Earth to make the transition from barbarism to civilization, and that emigrants from Atlantis sailed all over the world, bringing civilization to the human populations already in those areas. With them, they brought their alphabet, on which Donnelly says the Phoenician alphabet was modeled. The Phoenician alphabet was then adopted and modified by many peoples and forms the basis of a number of alphabets that either were predecessors of or are they themselves modern alphabets still in use today. Donnelly says further that the oldest Atlantean colony is probably Egypt, whose society was meant to mirror that of Atlantis. Speaking of Egypt, Andy, Donnelly, Egypt Andy. That's my pharaoh.
My counterpart.
Speaking of Egypt, Donnelly claims that the Egyptian and Peruvian religions are based on the true Atlantean religion, worship of the sun.
And Art. While we're on the topic of ancient religions, Donnelly's book also says that the gods of ancient religions and mythologies were really just the notable people of Atlantis, like the kings, the queens, and the heroes. Donnelly imagined Atlantis as a true paradise. In fact, he imagined it was the source of inspiration for the stories of other prehistoric paradises in religious or mythological traditions, such as the Norse mythological Asgard or the Judeo-Christian biblical Garden of Eden. Donnelly claims that Atlantis was destroyed in massive flooding brought on by an enormous comet hitting the Earth. Survivors of the Atlantis disaster then rafted to other parts of the globe and shared their tales. These stories, according to Donnelly, became the basis of the Great Flood or deluge traditions that exist in so many cultures, such as the biblical flood of Noah, as an example.
These are deluge stories.
They are the delugest events that have happened in human history. Anyway, in these stories of paradise and disaster, Donnelly saw a historical memory shared by all people globally being adapted by the different cultures of the people sharing the story. Donnelly also authored a companion book to Atlantis, the Antediluvian World, the pretty honestly epically named Ragnarok, the Age of Fire and Gravel.
It's like a Dragon Force album.
Yeah, it's either that or it could be my paving business. Ragnarok, the business of fire and gravel. Will come and pave your parking
I love
lot.
it.
Anyway, in Ragnarok, Donnelly claimed that after the comet disaster, the advanced people of Earth had to take shelter from the devastation by living in caves. While living in caves, these people forgot everything they learned about art and music and engineering, setting human civilization back who knows how many years.
Listeners, in the interest of giving you the whole enchilada, which is what we always set out to do, we should mention that Donnelly is not well thought of in mainstream academic circles. He's pretty much considered a crank who likes to crank, and his work... Oh, wait, that's me. He's just considered a crank.
Yeah.
And his work has been described as pseudoscience or pseudo-history. His work has been influential in occult circles and with other practitioners of pseudoscience and pseudo-history, but despite this mainstream criticism, was Donnelly onto something? Is it possible that Atlantis was a real erotic place on Earth?
Well, Art, some people sure think so. First, let me give you the mainstream history lowdown on Atlantis. Basically, most scholars agree that the Atlantis in Plato's writing was a work of fiction. They see Atlantis as an allegory on the dangers of hubris. Timaeus starts with a recap of what attributes an ideal state possesses. Then, Socrates says that the ideal state sounds pretty cool, and he sure would love to hear a story about that ideal state interacting with other states.
And listeners, Critias eagerly obliges by sharing the story of Atlantis' attempt to conquer the Mediterranean and Athens' stunning victory and the destruction of Atlantis at the large, strong, muscular hands of Zeus.
Okay.
Anyway, sorry. When we put the story in a historical and literary context, though, Plato is essentially telling the reader the story of how an ideally organized state, Athens, can prevail against a seemingly overwhelming opponent, Atlantis. Atlantis represents a state that soared to great heights and achieved much, but at its core was subject to corruption by its own hubris. Athens, meanwhile, represents a state that stayed humble and untouched by corruption.
So basically, Plato manufactured Atlantis to serve as a literary device. At least that's the overall scholarly opinion. It may be possible, though, that Plato based the story of Atlantis on some events that actually happened.
So what you're telling me, Andy, is that Atlantis is kind of like Plato's own erotic fan fiction, right?
It's not exactly erotic.
Well, then where did my boner come from, Andy?
All right, moving on. Listeners, there is much speculation over the actual factual historical locale that could be the inspiration for Plato's Atlantis. Let's run down some of the prime suspects, shall we? Most people place Atlantis somewhere in the Atlantic Ocean. This is because in Plato's writing, Atlantis is described as being beyond the Pillars of Hercules.
Right.
Most people interpret the Pillars of Hercules as being the sides of the Strait of Gibraltar, so the Iberian Peninsula and northern Africa. Therefore, from Greece's perspective, anything beyond, that is, to the west of, the Strait of Gibraltar would be beyond the Pillars of Hercules. The Canary Islands and the Madeira Islands have both been named as possible locations of Atlantis, But this has been discredited by geologists who say that these island chains have been steadily rising over the last 4 million years.
Some people say that the Pillars of Hercules may not necessarily mean the Strait of Gibraltar. Some place the pillars in the Mediterranean Sea and believe that the Atlantis myth could be a reference to the enormous, throbbing eruption of the Thera volcano on the island we now know of as Santorini.
Oh, how nice.
The Thera eruption was one of the largest volcanic events in recorded history, Andy. Thera sprayed load after load of thick magma and ash into the atmosphere, causing massive destruction on the island and in the wider region. The eruption was accompanied by earthquakes and possibly led to tsunamis.
Still, others place the location of Atlantis elsewhere. Some have suggested European locales that were either completely flooded or otherwise destroyed by tsunamis. Some suggest that Atlantis was on Antarctica, which these theorists suggest used to be further north than it is today. When the continent shifted south, Atlantis became buried under the ice. Still, others have suggested Caribbean locations. There's even a hypothesis that Atlantis disappeared in the Bermuda Triangle. But wait, there's more. Some have suggested even that Atlantis may have been located somewhere in the Pacific Ocean. The bottom line here is, if Atlantis was real, we sure don't know where it was.
Now, Andy, a lot of these locations have been somewhat debunked or otherwise discredited by scientists. What if I told you, though, that science now says that the sinking of an island might be possible?
I'd say that sounds like an important ingredient in this week's enchilada, and you should most definitely share it with our listeners.
Well, Andy, and the listeners, science now says just that. Geologist Patrick Nunn investigated a story told in the Solomon Islands that tells of an island that was completely submerged by the sea. Nunn's research shows that the story probably refers to a tsunami chain. That's right, listeners. Tsunamis can run train now.
All right.
Nunn notes, though, that tsunamis alone can't sink islands, especially those that are high above the sea level. Tsunamis can devastate coastal cities, even completely wiping some out, but not entire islands. What Nunn finds is that the island in the story was likely sitting on a steep underwater slope, right? So an earthquake on the seafloor rattled the foundations of the island, and it slipped from the shelf, becoming completely submerged in the water and generating a tsunami train in the process.
That's some tasty information.
Oh, yeah.
So it's at least possible that a disaster like Atlantis could actually occur. Was Atlantis just a myth? Was it just concocted by Plato to make a point? Or is there more to the story? If there were real Atlanteans, were they really possessed of a highly advanced civilization? If so, where was Atlantis located, and can we ever unlock the secrets that were buried at sea? While we ponder these questions, let's consider another song about underwater life, as sung by Homer Simpson. Under the sea. Under the sea. There'll be no accusations, just friendly crustaceans. Under the sea.
Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time podcast will be right back after this brief message.
Ooh, it sure is chilly outside, Art.
Andy, where's your jacket?
Art, did you hear me? The wind chill is 30 below.
Andy, I think you have hypothermia.
You know, Art, with the horrific chilly weather outside, the only thing that'll warm me up is listening to Andy and Art Debunked, available only on patreon.com/MrBunkerPod.
Are Are you seriously shilling our Patreon right now?
Oh, Art. Laughing at the antics of Andy and Art is all the warmth I need. And for just $5 a month, I get access to all the episodes of the show, behind-the-scenes updates, sneak peeks at episodes, and I can chat with Andy and Art on the Bunker Discord.
Andy, we need to get you to a hospital.
We need to get me to patreon.com/MrBunkerPod. It's so chilly. Oh, God. I'm chilled to the bone.
Hello, listeners.
Hi there.
Hey.
Thanks for sticking with us.
I hope you enjoyed our excursion into the lost civilization of Atlantis.
Back in time and way out to sea over there in the Mediterranean. We hope you had a fun excursion with us.
I know I did. I love the beach. Andy, when I was a child, I was quoted once, and my family finds this quote so funny.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the funny thing, you have a child, the funny little things that your kid says. And
they say the darndest things.
Some would say they say the darndest things. I once said that water is my destiny.
Wow.
I loved swimming. I loved being in the water. I loved playing with the hose and doing wet t-shirt contests as a child,
right?
And winning them.
I didn't just love doing them. I loved winning them.
You know,
I was in the U18 wet t-shirt contest.
Yeah. There was that brief stint where some government workers took me away from my house, and I don't remember much of that. But anyway,
you probably got MK Ultra.
No, I loved water, and so I don't know why I brought that up. I just think it's fun. This is a very water-filled episode.
This is a real Kevin Costner type of situation.
I think I would be at home in Atlantis.
Yeah. Well, you think? Our Atlantis was a place amongst the sea. Although, they say that it was quite large. Supposedly, it was the size of both Africa and Asia Minor combined.
That's
a huge continent.
That's really fucking big.
Yeah. And there were humans there, but then Poseidon and Cleito had their children there that became in charge. So it was ruled by demigods.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the images that I always see rendered of Atlantis show it as like this weird ring city.
Yes.
Or this ring civilization that's like made of like an onion.
Yeah, that's the basic construction of it, is that it's like concentric ringed islands, and
right.
It's like alternating land and water.
That doesn't seem like the best way to build. I'm no fucking architect or some shit. Or city planner. Doesn't seem like it would be the smartest way to build a city.
Well, I mean,
because you got to think about traffic, like getting to that outer ring. That's a fucking nightmare.
There's only one path to take.
Yeah.
When you're Poseidon, though, you don't care.
Yeah, you're Poseidon. All
right.
Well, Andy, I don't know. Blanket statements. What do you think? What are we thinking about Atlantis?
I think
real, not real.
Here's what's interesting is that I think that there probably is some historical inspiration here.
Probably. Athens obviously was real.
Athens was real.
It is a wonderful city in Georgia that Plato based his writings on.
Plato loved Athens, Georgia. Big booster for the University of Georgia. Go Dogs.
Go Dogs. Arr. When you beat the bulldog, you're gonna feel the bulldog bite.
Resident Dogs fan, Art Stone.
Yeah. I'm more of a Sunbelt Conference fan. I like the Louisiana Lafayette Ragin' Cajuns.
Ragin' Cajuns.
The Georgia State. They're Bulldogs too, aren't they? Troy Trojans.
Probably. There's some.
The Western Kentucky Hilltoppers?
Yeah.
What the fuck is a Hilltopper? You ever seen their mascot?
Yeah, it's that big red thing.
It looks like a big Clifford's penis.
Yeah, Clifford the dog's ding dong.
Anyway,
Clifford the ding dong.
I'm getting off track here.
Are you?
Clifford. Am I? Athens was a real place in Greece. Let's
talk about how the Western Kentucky mascot intersects with Atlantis.
Let's talk about the very well-known collegiate Sun Belt Conference of NCAA football.
Really the Atlantis of NCAA.
People always sleep on the Sun Belt, and they always just want to talk about the SEC.
But you know what? Your pants fall down if you don't wear a Sun Belt.
You don't put on a Sun Belt, you're going to get burnt. Okay, yeah. Athens was real, obviously.
Athens was real. There's been so much speculation in the positioning of Atlantis based on the Pillars of Hercules. So, it might be useful to say what's the origin of that terminology. So there's a myth about Hercules, and there's like these, however many, one of the things about him is like he has to perform so many tasks as part of his, like, in one of the things about him, one of the stories about him. And one of the tasks is like he has to gather sheep or something, I think, is what it is. And the furthest sheep that he has to gather is like as far as any person can go, like the edge of the known world, basically. And so where that point is what they call the Pillars of Hercules. And they call it that. It's not so much that there's nothing beyond there. It's that nobody knows what's beyond there. So it's the unknown. So, depending on what you think about that, does it make sense to say, is one of those things like, is Gibraltar makes sense to people, I think, because it's like there's pillars. But some people say that the Pillars of Hercules was actually a reference to like an island in the Greek island chain, somewhere that was inside the Mediterranean.
Wow. That means he fucking sucks. Couldn't even go outside of Greece.
Yeah, he didn't go very far.
Jeez. Dude's a fucking demigod.
Yeah. But nobody really knows where the Pillars of Hercules are supposed to be. I mean, I think it's pretty much like, like most people say, it's the Strait of Gibraltar.
Right. I think Atlantis could have easily been based off of another civilization. Could have easily been based off the Egyptians, right?
I don't know that it would be, though, because
you don't think?
The Egyptians would have been known to the Greeks, right? Like there wouldn't have been any mystery about it. One good,
yeah, but as a literary device.
Well, but they would have probably used. I mean, they could have maybe used some of the features of Egyptian culture, but
worship the sun.
Yeah, well, that was more of a Donnelly thing than a Plato thing. In Plato's example, it doesn't really. It just basically says that Atlantis is like a match on par with Athens in terms of its like, how shall I say, observance of religious ceremony and stuff. So, theoretically in Plato's writing that Atlanteans were following the same Greek pantheon.
Gotcha. Andy, unfortunately, I think you were a little let down by this week's research and this topic, right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I bunkered through this out here, and I thought, that sounds interesting.
Sounds fucking cool.
Like the lost civilization of Atlantis. Who wouldn't? But you know what? It just is kind of like...
Yeah, there's just really not much there. There's not a lot of meat.
There's not a lot of meat on this bone.
Yeah, this fish has been picked dry.
Yeah, picked dry. This fish
picked clean,
picked dry. another classic art cliche. This fish has been picked dry.
I got him, baby. I'm full of them.
And you're not just breathing me full of hot air.
Okay. From our hit breatharian episode last week.
Number 1 on the charts.
Number 1 on the charts. Here's Mr. Bunker with Breatharian. Yeah, I mean, there's no evidence. There's no.
Well, the problem is that most scholars say that Plato was really just using this as an allegory.
Kind of makes a lot of that. Was kind of his thing, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Like there weren't actually people trapped in caves.
There wasn't like a real cave.
Kind of. It's in the title. It's the allegory of the cave. Plato was kind of into that.
Yeah, and
this is the kind of stuff that got Plato rock hard.
Yeah.
Writing allegories, talking about the Socratic method, fucking like Doing all that shit.
Plato's one of these people who had a distrust generally of like fiction because he thought it was sort of misleading. And so like almost proves his point that like when you write fiction, like it can be misconstrued in a lot of ways.
He's up there in fucking Olympia.
Yeah.
Or wherever the Greeks called heaven. It was Olympia, right?
Mount Olympus, you mean?
Yeah. Where did all the gods live? They lived like up in
Mount Olympus.
Yeah. And he's down there. He's like, I fucking told them. See? Because he's pissed that everyone.
Yeah.
People think it was real.
Yeah.
That was the bit.
That was the bit. Yeah, I get it.
You get it, dude.
Get it. But a lot of the scholarly work on it now seems to say that probably there's some historical truth to it because it would have lent credence to the story, so it would have had a bigger impact. So like Solon obviously was a real person. His journey to Egypt, that's supposedly a real thing. I mean, obviously these things are harder to verify, ultimately, but that's supposedly a real thing. He enacted these reforms in Athens, and then he left Athens for like a decade or something, so that he wouldn't be pressured to repeal any of his laws.
Smart move.
Yeah. So he traveled to Egypt. So there's this plausibility factor that it could have been actually something that Solon heard. So it would have given it this legitimacy at the time that people, so Plato might have just constructed that whole thing, just to say, like, here's my point, but you can tell that I'm making a good point because it's supported by this other stuff that is easy for you to believe and respect.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I mean, that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah.
I don't think you're going to find any shocking revelations at the end of today's episode with our reviews.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah, I mean, I think that like it could have easily maybe been a real place, a very small island or some kind of small civilization that it doesn't have to be some island civilization either. It could have just been like a civilization that existed, some kind of tribe or colony that was wiped out somehow and through their own hubris.
They in the Socratic dialogues, they refer to this as being like like 9,000 years before the time of the writing.
Right.
So it's like it's supposed to be in the distant past. And there are throughout history, like there was some speculation in Plato's time that Atlantis might have been a real place. And there's some arguments for it, like Aristotle, some of his stuff kind of discusses that. But I don't think it was like widespread that Atlantis was real. Most people kind of accepted that it was just a literary thing, like a device that he was using. It was an allegory. And in the Renaissance writers, it doesn't seem like most people believe that it was real. They were writing like Utopia as a fiction,
Yeah.
They didn't believe in a utopia, but they sort of romanticized Atlantis as being like a lost
or a fruitopia.
Yeah, a lost fruitopia. Like when your fruitopia falls out of your hand and that plastic bottle rolls underneath the fruitopia machine. A lost fruitopia lost.
That classic fruitopia machine.
Did everyone else have those in their high schools like mine did?
What?
We had a fruitopia machine.
You had a dispensable yogurt drink machine.
No, fruitopia is not yogurt.
What?
No.
What?
No.
What's a fruitopia?
You've never had fruitopia?
What the fuck?
I
thought it was that Danimals thing. Oh no,
it's
that
a
was
fruit
Danimals.
drink. Yeah, you just said a different company altogether. It was a brand of fruit-based beverages that was
Fruitopia
distributed by Coke.
I've never seen this.
You've never seen Fruitopia?
Maybe I have. Oh, you know what? Yeah, now I'm looking at them in the plastic bottles. There was I remember these.
Yeah.
Yeah. We didn't have these. No. These went away, Andy.
Yeah, probably.
These look good though.
Yeah,
in
Fruitopias
1994 and targeted at teens and young adults. Makes sense.
Yeah.
The rise and fall of Fruitopia, the trippiest beverage of the 90s.
Yeah.
Very cool. Hey, listeners out there, if you were a Fruitopia fan and you had one in your high school, tweet at us at Mr. Bunker Pod with the hashtag
Tell us your favorite flavor.
Tell us your favorite flavor and tweet us the hashtag
Fruitopia Lost. Okay, Art doesn't like it.
It's good.
Let's throw another one out
good.
there.
It's good. Fruitopia Lost. God damn it. Oh boy, Andy. Okay. Now I remember what Fruitopia is. Okay.
Thanks.
Yeah, I mean,
but then Art, in the 19th century, that's when Donnelly writes Atlantis, the Antediluvian World.
Okay, so
and yeah,
Tolkien also wrote Middle Earth. Doesn't mean that it's fucking real.
Donnelly's an interesting character, though.
Yeah.
He was a Minnesota congressman. He was a lieutenant governor in Minnesota. He was a state senator, state representative. He was active in the populist labor movement of the late 19th century.
Huh.
He was an early advocate for women's suffrage.
Huh.
Yeah. So he's a weird character, and avid pseudo historian, described a lot as like an amateur scholar. And he wrote this book on Atlantis, these 2 books on Atlantis. He was like like something that they call as like a catastrophist. So somebody who like believes in these like catastrophic events happening on Earth that are like shaping history.
He's real. It turns him on real hard.
Right. That's yeah. He's like a furry, but for like catastrophic events.
Yeah, it's just like the idea of a big, strong, thick meteor.
Just absolutely hulking meteor.
Hulking meteor crushing my wife while I watch from a closet.
Yeah, cuckolded by a comet was his third.
Cucked by a comet.
That was his follow-up book to Ragnarok.
Oh my God.
Cucked by a comet. Listeners, anything you tweet at us about this episode that doesn't have to do with Fruitopia, use the hashtag cucked by a comet.
Cucked by a comet.
But yeah, he was kind of the guy that originated this hypothesis of Atlantis being this super advanced civilization that seeded the civilizations of all the rest of the world. They were, and this was picked up by Helena Blavatsky, the co-founder of the Theosophist Society, the famous occultist. And so
what? Yeah.
Donnelly's view book has a lot more fans in the esoteric community than it does in mainstream science.
Your listeners don't know this. They might know this, but I know this because I know you. You were really into the occult for a while, not believing in it, just studying it because you were interested.
I was interested in it. I learned a few things. I mean, there's a lot to learn.
There's so much. It's a huge topic, and it is one, listeners, that we want to cover in an episode. But hey,
if Mr.
If
Bunker
you really want to see us cover it, you got to tweet at us.
Yeah,
because Mr. Bunker loves getting feedback, and he loves hearing from the listeners. And he I think if you told him you want to see us discuss it, he would make us discuss it.
He's in this bunker all alone. He
Yeah.
loves to hear from other humans.
So Andy, why were
internet.
these occultists so into the idea of Atlantis? Because I think when you think of the idea of Atlantis, you think of this weird utopia. You think of sea monkey people. You think of mermaids. You think of
Yeah.
Greek-looking people living in concentric circle islands.
I don't really know why the occult.
Because when you think of the occult, you think of like weird, drug junkie freaks like Aleister Crowley and selling your soul to the devil and pentagrams. You don't really think of Atlantis.
I mean, like Helena Blavatsky's thing, like the Theosophists, it's all about the like secret knowledge.
Okay, so they had some kind of secret knowledge.
So I think that the Atlantis myth, being like a real place, these occultists are sometimes, they're people who think that the natural, like the accepted version of events doesn't like add up exactly, and they think that there's something else going on in the background that we're not being told. And so I think this is one of those things that people feel like Atlantis maybe Atlantis was a thing that existed, and like there was secret knowledge that was hidden away that we're not being allowed to access, that could like
Do we
advance
know
human
anything about the
civilization.
secret knowledge?
So
They obviously didn't fucking do a good job.
so
Secret knowledge didn't help them survive.
Well, yeah, and that's one thing to consider. Here's something else to chew on. There was a guy born in Kentucky named Edgar Casey who what was the issue? I think that he had like a hearing problem. He was like deaf as a boy, or he lost his hearing at some point, and he saw a doctor.
Played a mean pinball.
Yeah, he could see and he could talk. But he eventually got his hearing back through the help of a doctor, and somehow or another he became like he was like a person who had like special mental abilities. So he said like he could he had like he would diagnose people through the mail, like medically, because he could like see their issues, their medical issues, so he didn't have to like see them in person. But he also claimed to be able to tap into this this thing known as the Akashic record, which is basically like
another future topic,
another occultist type of thing, which is basically like everything in the universe has energy, right?
Right.
And everything broadcasts its energy. And that energy is like stored in like a giant record in the background of the universe. And this is called the Akashic record. So it's basically everything that's ever happened in the universe you could know if you could tap into the Akashic record.
And he can.
So Casey allegedly could tap into the Akashic record.
Gotcha.
So he suggested that there was a store of records from Atlantis that are buried in a vault underneath the Sphinx in Egypt. And they did, it's like the Egyptian like antiquities people are like, the Egyptian government's all over the place now. But nobody's ever found this thing even before the Egyptian government was really tightly controlling it. But they've done some like what do I want to say, like ground penetrating radar and stuff. I know you're into that, Art. And there's like, I think that they found like a little void underneath the Sphinx where there could have been something. And I believe they sent a team.
The Sphinx is sphincter?
It's a sphinxter. The sphinxter.
The sphinxter.
They sent a team to like dig
Chucky
it up.
Sphinxter.
But then the Egyptian authorities came by right before they got to it, and so nobody's ever been allowed to go back there and like excavate the site. So nobody really knows for sure if this mysterious void that was underneath the Sphinx has anything to do. But Edgar Casey's suggestion is that underneath the Sphinx there's this collection of records from Atlantis.
That's interesting.
It's interesting.
Now that's a little something to bite onto. There's a little bit of meat left on this fish's bones, huh?
The fish has not been. What did you say?
Picked clean.
Picked dry.
I said picked clean. That's what I said.
But I mean, that all sort of hinges on whether you think that Edgar Casey is capable of such a thing or not. But he's an interesting character for sure.
Maybe we'll do an episode on him.
Yeah, he's an interesting character. And so there's, the occult community is sort of, embraced Atlantis as being like a source of inspiration for, what civilization could be. Like Helena Blavatsky, like equated it to this lost continent, whose the name of which escapes me at the moment, but supposedly there were these like 6 iterations of humanity, like 6 races of humanity. And the Atlanteans were like the 4th race or something. So they're like people descended now from the Atlanteans.
The 5th was Chester Cheetah, the Cheetah.
Yeah. I don't understand how it all
race
goes.
Of cheetahs.
It sounds, I mean, it's like there's a lot of that occultist stuff. So it's like, it's like, oh, it's part of the Aryan race or whatever.
Yeah, it gets a little bit of a racism.
It gets a little, into the racism there. So I can't say, I don't know too much about it. Like, to be honest, I haven't dug so deep into that.
I got you.
But, they've kind of latched onto it as this like thing. And, maybe there's something to it because, Art, when the library at Alexandria burned down, Like it had so many different manuscripts and books and stuff. People feel like that probably set human civilization back like hundreds of years.
Oh wow!
Because there was so much collected wisdom lost. It was manuscripts and stuff that existed nowhere else.
Wow.
So maybe
maybe there was an Atlantis manuscript that said like, hey, by the way,
right,
Atlantis was a real place.
Right. Who knows? Who knows what we lost in the fire?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if we're missing it much though.
Yeah, I don't know either.
Because
it's one of those things now where it's kind of like, oh, we would have just developed faster.
Yeah.
But we probably are past the point where the Atlanteans were now. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we find one of the manuscripts now and it's like, hey guys, by the way.
By the way, SARS is bad. It's like, oh geez, throw this thing in the trash.
We already fucking knew that. Got a cure for it.
Yeah.
Guys.
We figured it out.
You can build a structure that's more than one story tall. Let me tell you how it's done. Ready? No, dude. Burj Khalifa.
Arches.
Arches, dude.
This is where it is.
Aqueducts, man.
What'd you say, Mia Khalifa?
Yeah, that super tall building, Mia Khalifa. The Mia Khalifa. Many a people have tried to scale the Mia Khalifa.
That's one well-constructed building.
Oh, good God. Andy.
Many a men laid a brick for that one.
Oh boy. Andy, speaking of Mia Khalifa,
go ahead.
What's your idea of your Atlantis paradise if we had to go to Atlantis?
Obviously, it's going to be easier for you, Atlantis.
Yeah, well.
What would be the features of Atlantis?
Atlantis.
Maybe
that's better.
The Garden of Andy.
The Garden of Andy. What's in there? Lay it on me.
What's on there?
What happened before it sank? Fucking sank.
Sunk beneath the waves. Wow. I think that no food would have anything other than good cholesterol. And that's the only difference.
Oh my God. Nothing else. Everyone wears fucking polos.
No, I think if it was my garden, there would be very few people allowed in. Invite only.
People aren't nude.
Maybe. I don't know.
The place. I think that place deserves a sink. Sounds like it fucking sucks.
Would people be nude in Atlantis?
Maybe. I always said to myself as a joke that when I got really old, I would join a nudist colony just for the shits and giggles.
Mm-hmm.
I don't mind being nude. If we lived in a warmer climate, a place that wasn't like where your door hinges freeze in the winter, like they do here in Chicago, I would probably walk around more nude than I do currently.
I'm a little self-conscious, I guess, being nude. But I do think
have a child.
It feels good to be nude, right?
It doesn't feel bad.
And you know what?
There's something to those nudists.
I think some people are like okay being nude themselves, but they feel weird about seeing other people nude while they're nude.
Yeah.
And I don't know how if that would be weird for me or not.
I think it would be a little weird. Because we always associate nudity with like sexuality, right? Like,
yeah, I think so.
Unless you're showering.
I mean, that's like the way that we've constructed society.
Sure.
Like nudity means like, oh, there's either something bad or something erotic is going to happen because you're either in an emergency room or you're about to get down.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, but I don't know how I'd function in a nudist colony.
Yeah.
Probably not well. Most of the, I don't think many of the people in nudist colonies are the most appetizing.
Appetizing
for the eyes.
I don't know. I don't know. It's like, I don't know. It's one of those things where it's like, oh, it's like if I saw another person's naked body, I would probably be like looking at it too much. Like not. I don't want to make it sound like I'm like it's gonna come off like I'm leering at people, but that's not what I mean.
You're a voyeur.
Like I would, like you were like, do you ever like
imagine Andy like first day at the nudist colony, he's talking to somebody who's just like his head is tilted down, staring right at the person's tits or their penis, just like yeah,
But do you ever like study the people that are on the train with you?
Oh yes.
Yeah. So like I feel like it would be kind of
And
the same thing.
it's not like
but
a creepy thing. It's just like you just want to look at people. I don't know.
I just am like interested in what are people
Why
wearing?
does your
Like,
chin look like
what
that?
are they doing? Like what are they up to?
Yeah. Why is your
What's
nose
their face look like? But I also find it weird
Why
when
is
I'm
your
on the
donger
train
hanging to
and
the
I'm
left?
aware that somebody's drawing me. Does that ever happen to you?
What?
You ever see somebody with like a sketch pad on the train and they just keep looking at you?
Someone has drawn you on the train.
I'm almost certain of it. Like just a couple of weeks ago.
Well, you were posing nude and holding like a bowl of fruit.
I was doing I was doing like a Napoleon pose.
That's right.
I was completely nude.
Captain Morgan. That's crazy. That's never happened. There is a guy who sometimes is on my train schedule, depending on if I'm running late or not, and I'll see him. And he when he sits down on one of the train lines, he'll pull out his sketch pad and he'll just start sketching. I don't think he's sketching other people though.
Yeah, I was sitting next to a person who was literally like looking at the doors of the train and sketching the people that were standing beside it.
Oh, that's interesting.
And I kind of feel like I feel weird about taking, like sometimes I'll see something on the train, I'll think, oh, I should take a picture of this, but then I feel weird because it's like that person didn't give me the right to take their picture.
That's true.
And I'm not like, I'm doing it for my own personal use, so I'm not like a sanctioned like photographer. Like nobody has agreed to this. So I think that that's kind of like an invasion of privacy in a
little
way.
bit.
And then it's like, well, is drawing people also an invasion of privacy?
I don't know. Maybe not. Because it's an artistic interpretation. They're not necessarily drawing you in some realistic sense where they're going to be able to like.
It's not a police.
Yeah, he might be doing like he might be studying you for expression and for figure.
Yeah,
just drawing your figure, like your the curves of
you
or the curves of other people.
Because as an artist, he hasn't drawn enough eggs, so he needs to draw my figure.
Yeah, he really wants to practice like gumdrops.
Yeah.
Dots, your head.
Dots the candy.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't think so. Listeners, what do you think? Is drawing somebody an invasion of privacy?
Probably the top topic related to Atlantis.
Yeah.
Is drawing someone a privacy?
Let us know what you think. Is it right to draw somebody publicly versus take their photograph? What's the difference? Let us know what you think. So yeah, Andy's Atlantis sounds like a lame ass place that deserves a sink. There's no nudity.
There's maybe nudity. I'm undecided.
Not a lot of people allowed in there.
That's a big plus for me. I mean, I can't believe you're allowing people into your Atlantis.
Well, I kind of think it's a given. It's like a colony.
Yeah.
So it's part of the hypothesis.
Oh,
part of our Socratic method here.
Oh, you have to assume that other people will be allowed in.
Yeah, it's the leader of your society.
Well, if there's a lot of people, what other? Well, this is good. This is just like the Socratic dialogues. What are our ideal states? What would it be? What would our paradise be? All right, I think that there would be
Mine is like an introvert's paradise. Everybody lives far away or generally kind of near each other enough that we can keep each other safe, but at the same time, you got plenty of space, very tall fences so no one can see into your... So if you want to do weird shit in your backyard, you can do weird shit in your backyard and not feel embarrassed.
I feel like we're uncovering some issues old Art has at home.
I'm just saying. Food, there's a Portillo's on every corner.
Every corner.
Cheese fries are free on Fridays. You're not allowed to talk if you take an Uber. There's a public free Ubering.
I think honestly, if we were going to talk about what's paradise, like it's honestly like a communist paradise, right? Like at the end of the day. Where
I don't want to give up my stuff to anybody.
Where, yeah, but it's that thing of like where, you live in a paradise, so you don't need anything. Like you don't have want for anything. So if you need anything, you have it.
Okay. We can't let you go too crazy. This is you have to develop your own Atlantis colony.
I have to do it by myself.
It's not a fucking utopia. Yeah.
Oh.
You got to populate it.
Oh, well, then it dies with me, I guess. Listeners, you might not know this, but Art knows this. I'm genetically sterile. So.
Oh my God.
Amanda can populate it with her second husband.
Azoospermia, right?
Azoospermia, yeah.
Yeah.
A zoo with no animals.
Okay, Andy, but you know what I'm saying? Like, you can't have a utopia. It's got to be
just. Well, wait. What's the exercise we're doing then?
Was Atlantis considered a utopia?
Well, that's the thing. Is
Donnelly did, right? But Plato didn't.
Donnelly certainly did. A lot of Renaissance writers romanticized it that way, and many more modern interpretations see it as like a utopian place. And I mean, Donnelly says it was probably the inspiration for the Garden of Eden, for example. But Plato, in his book, it's like it's a place that's rich with resources. There's wealth to be had. The people are advanced and strong, and they have a great. It's mostly in the context, though, of their military power, which is very strong, and that's why they're when they go on this imperialist bent and start to try to take over the Mediterranean, the fact that they get repulsed by Athens is sort of shocking.
Like a David and Goliath.
Right. It's a classic David and Goliath type of situation. Because Atlantis is a seemingly overwhelming opponent. Their military power is supposed to be so great that nobody should stand in their way.
Listeners, let us know what your Atlantis is like.
Yeah.
Tweet at us or email us. The hashtag my Atlantis more is set.
Yes, listeners, if you can figure it out, tweet at us with the hashtag #MyAtlantisMoreIsSet.
More is set.
More is set.
Boy.
Hey, I want to mention too.
Yeah. Anything else you want to cover? Because we're gonna start wrapping up.
I guess
soon,
we're running out of time here. But I was I want to just say we talked about getting cucked by a comet, and the story in the Solomon Islands, which is pretty interesting, honestly.
It is.
That story, I won't be able to say any of the names, do them justice, but I'm going to give you the general idea is that there's a guy.
I won't judge you for it.
There's a guy and he's married and he gets freaking cucked. His wife goes to another island and starts to live with another man. So he gets 4 waves. He gets 2 attached to the front of his boat and 2 waves attached to the back of his boat. And he gets this little plant, and he takes the plant and he plants it on the island where his wife is cucking him, and her new man are cucking him. And the story goes that when the plant, I think, blossoms, like that's when the waves get released and they hit the island. And so it's like the plant blossoms, and then the 4 waves hit it like. It's like 1, 2, 3, 4. Like the waves hit it all, and then it sinks into the ocean. So, like that, Patrick Nunn, the geologist, is saying that what they can see happening is that this island is like perched precariously on this, like how the seabed is, like like there's a big shelf, like it's a big drop off,
right?
And the island is
like an underwater cliff.
Yeah, and the island is like right on the edge of the cliff, and so. What happens is there's an earthquake and it shakes the whole foundation of the island, and the island slides off of the cliff and it just sinks because the seabed is gone completely there. It's on a cliff. And so the island just like sinks, and then that act of the island sinking causes the tsunamis to go out. And so like because of the way that it sinks, there are like multiple like waves of tsunamis. It's not just one big tsunami. It's like there are several. And so what they sort of think is that this story in the mythology of the people of the Solomon Islands is based on an actual event of an island sinking. But because they don't really understand that whole part of it being on the cliff under the sea, because they can't go down that far into the ocean.
Right.
That in the way that people experienced it was like there were waves and then they found out the island had sunk. So it's like to them, the way they put it together is that there were these huge tsunamis that sunk the island, even though it's like kind of the inverse is what's actually happening.
Gotcha. That is interesting.
Because they can't see all of it.
Well,
so there's at least some credence that a situation like Atlantis could have happened. I mean, obviously the Santorini thing, that was a huge volcanic eruption and it completely destroyed the island. The Minoan civilization was like completely destroyed by the eruption of Thera. And so a lot of people think that the Minoans might have been the basis for the Atlanteans.
I don't doubt that. I don't doubt that there have been crazy natural disasters and that we've seen what a tsunami can do to a modern civilization.
Yeah.
When the most recent ones were in Indonesia, right?
Yeah. Those
were devastating. I mean, there was video of them. It was fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's crazy.
You know, and what they did to Fukushima as well was another one. That's a crazy one.
In relation to Atlantis, there's some places in the Iberian Peninsula in Spain that were like whole cities that were completely wiped out by tsunamis that people think could have been a location of Atlantis.
So, you know, like, why does it always, you know, does it have to be that the entire island sank, or does it have to be that their entire civilization was washed away by a fucking tsunami?
Well, that's the thing.
Makes sense to me.
Yeah. You know, and like if
tsunamis are destroying modern day civilizations,
if Plato's using it as a device and it's not like, you don't take it literally. I mean, it doesn't have to be that an island sank. It could just be that, you know, his inspiration could have come from just any place that got destroyed by tsunamis.
True.
Or an earthquake.
Andy, as we're wrapping up here, is there anything else that you want to touch on with the lost civilization of Atlantis before we get to our reviews and our ratings? Anything else you want to bring up?
You know, folks, just...
You know what, folks? If you're in a relationship that's not working, you need to sit down and talk with your partner and not go off and cuck them so that they cause an entire civilization to sink, okay? I'm just saying. Just talk it out.
Folks, if
you're not happy, let them know. End it amicably. Don't cuck.
Folks,
unless you're really into cucking,
we're not here to
cuck.
we're not here to kink shame you. If cucking is your thing and you and your partner are both okay with it, do it. Have fun with it. If you're using cucking as an act of aggression against another person,
be safe.
Stop and think. Is
Stop
this the
before
right
you
thing
cuck.
to do? Yeah.
Cuck. C. Console. You.
Wait. C. Consult.
I'm acting like cuck is dare.
Yeah. C. Consult. U. It's Y-O. Big U-R. Another C. Companion.
Yeah. Kindly.
Yeah. Consult your companion kindly.
Cuck. We should all cuck each other. Okay?
We should all be cucking each other.
Let's all practice cuck. Let's all be good students of cuck. Just like we were all good students of DARE, the #1 anti-drug program that totally worked.
I've never done drugs.
And I am one.
Yeah.
I'm a drug.
I'm addicted to you.
Because I'm addicted to you.
I'm a dick. Addicted to you.
That was the song. Yeah, you got the melody right.
What was that, like LFO or something?
I was going to say fucking Def Leppard.
Def Leppard? I don't think that's right. Another good...
Simple Plan?
Oh, that might be it.
It was... Wait, what? Avicii? No, it was Simple Plan.
Yeah.
I'm a dick. I'm addicted to you. Lifestyles of the Rich and the Famous was good, Charlotte.
Lifestyles of the rich and famous.
Lifestyles.
What, Avicii covered it?
Famous. Must have.
Is Avicii the guy that died?
Yes. Tragically, actually. There's it's a very sad story. He really like, I don't know. deteriorated towards the end, and all the touring, the crazy nonstop touring, I think really affected him, combined with, a not healthy lifestyle of partying.
He didn't practice dare?
No.
Did he practice cuck?
I don't know if he practiced cuck. He definitely didn't practice dare.
Maybe if he would have dared to practice cuck, he would have.
Listeners, dare to practice, dare to cuck.
Dare to cuck.
We here at Mr. Bunker's Conspiracy Time Podcast dare you to cuck.
We are proud cucks. Here on
Console
Mr.
your
Bunker's
companion
Conspiracy.
kindly. Cuck.
Cuck.
Cuck one another.
We've every time we do something here, we cuck each other.
Andy, let's give our verdicts. Let's cuck our listeners and give them what they want. Let's give our verdicts. Please be my guest.
All right, I'll begin. So Atlantis, I guess. What do we think? I guess the biggest question is, was it even a real thing? Right? Was it real? Was Atlantis real? I'm going to give that plausible minus.
Wow.
And I'll tell you why, Art. Because
Okay.
I think that there's probably some historical inspiration for Atlantis, but I don't think that Atlantis itself, as it's been imagined over the years, was actually a real place, that there was this advanced race of superhumans or demigods that lived somewhere that was completely destroyed by catastrophe. But I do think that there's probably some good possibility that there was historical inspiration for it, but I don't think that it existed in the way that people have portrayed it now. Yeah, I don't find it so compelling.
Okay. Fair enough. Remind me again of your score?
Plausible minus.
Okay. Andy, I think I'm in
Thanks for cucking me before you started.
I am on Atlantis with you on this one.
Wow.
And we're syncing together.
We're going down together.
I think, did Atlantis exist? Sure, plausible minus as a literary metaphor.
Sure.
It was probably some civilization that, it was probably some oral history story that people told for a long time about this great civilization that, well, see, this is why you got to practice hubris, because you can get beat. It's like a David and Goliath story.
Yeah.
In fact, I'm going to go as far to say, for all the conspiracy about it, case closed.
Wow.
It's a literary agent.
Wow.
Did it exist? Maybe. I don't know. It was a literary agent. That's it. There's nothing crazy going on.
You heard
there.
it here first, folks. Art's cucking you with his verdict here today. Atlantis. Just a literary device.
Just a literary device. That's all I'm saying. Listeners, thank you so much for listening. Andy, any last remarks you want to say to the listeners before we head out? Besides, dare to cuck.
Dare to cuck. Enjoy the live action Little Mermaid that is almost certainly in the works with Disney.
Maybe we'll see some Atlantis there. Is that
Maybe
where
we
she's
will.
from?
I don't.
She's just from Mermaid City.
Yeah, Mermaidville, USA.
Mermaidville. Oh, she's not in the USA. Andy.
No, it's part of the USA.
Is it?
We claimed it.
Oh, hell yeah, dude.
Yeah.
Well, listeners, I hope you enjoyed our delicious excursion to the lost colony, lost civilization of Atlantis. For the titular Mr. Bunker and my Delphic co-host, Andy Hart, I'm Arthur Stone saying that was the whole enchilada.
Yummy.